Jumping into the number 5 spot of the best budget wireless gaming mice, this is the Logitech G305 LIGHTSPEED. Coming in at a price tag of $39.99. There will be Amazon links below for all of the 5 mice, including this one for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. But let's talk about the sensor for the Logitech G305. Now, this uses Logitech's Hero sensor, which is a very good sensor. It's incredibly proven. It's some people's favorite sensors. Professional gamers game with the Hero sensor. This has a 1000 Hertz polling rate, 12,000 DPI, 400 IPS, and 40 Gs of acceleration. Now, build quality here is fantastic, having tons of color options, which is very cool, and overall a very, very well put together mouse. The fit and finish is fantastic here with no creaks or anything like that. As far as the size, this is for average size to small size hands, depending on your grip, obviously, but it is on the smaller side, but it is not a tiny mouse. But because of the weight, it's not as good as the others on the list for that low DPI gaming. It's still really good, and especially considering that price point, it's unbelievably good, but it's not as good. Now, this is ambidextrous, and it does have those 2 side buttons, which do have a fair amount of travel. All right, now let's talk the gliding or the skates. Now, the skates here have 5 very small PTFE feet, 4 in the different corners of them. Now, they're very small, and this causes dragging. This design across basically any mouse usually just causes more dragging than your traditional huge amount at the bottom and then the top. I really don't like it when they do that corner PTFE skate design. Now, again, at this price point, beggars can't be choosers. You can get aftermarket skates here. It's not crazy bad, but there is noticeable dragging. Now, for connectivity, this is exclusively wireless. You cannot plug this in even if you want to. This uses a 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle. It is not Bluetooth. It is literally only the dongle. However, this is some of the best wireless connectivity. Well, actually, no. It is the single best wireless connectivity at this price point. You can't get any other cheap off-brand mouse that's 30 bucks, 35 bucks, 40 bucks that has a wireless connectivity this good. That is for gaming. This never skips a beat. It never disconnects. I've never had problems with range or anything like that. It is very solid. Logitech does a great job, obviously, well, the best job with wirelessness, and they can get away with giving that tech down at the bottom of their tier at some of the lowest price mice that they have that are wireless. Now, battery life here hits a claimed 250 hours. That depends on the batteries you use, obviously. However, with the standard alkaline battery that it comes with, which is a AA, you can expect around 2 months of performance, give or take, depending on use case. Now, obviously, since this is powered with a battery, there is no charging capabilities, but you can get a rechargeable battery, obviously. And I like it because if the mouse dies, you can just pop a new battery in and you're good to go for a long time. All right, but now let's talk the switches. These are a lighter switch, and I really enjoy them during gaming, but they are quite light. So if you're someone who has a tendency to accidentally click, well, these may not be the best for you. They're very, very light, but I am never prone to that happening, so I really enjoy this lightness during gameplay. Now, as far as the scroll wheel, well, we expect a lot from Logitech. They've had experience with some of the best scroll wheels in the industry, and this is very good for the price. It's very nice and tactile. No mushiness at all. Now, for the weight, this is kind of an interesting one because you have the capability to change the weight due to the battery, which is fairly heavy. Now, the AA battery here comes in at 99 grams, which is a lot for a low DPI FPS gamer. But if you switch the stock battery for a lithium AA, or even if you get an adapter to use a AAA in here, you can get the weight down. If you use a lithium AA, you can get it down to about 86, 87 grams. This makes a pretty big difference here, and definitely something that I would recommend. But even better, use that AAA with an adapter. But with that, let's move on to the number 4 spot, which is the Razer Orochi V2, coming in at a price tag of $44.99 at the time of filming. Links below, check those for current pricing. Prices of this stuff always fluctuate, so I can't tell you the exact price when you're watching this, so check the links below. But for this sensor, this is using the Pulsar 3369 sensor, which is the Razer version of the 3335 sensor. Now, this is actually a great, very accurate sensor and a great sensor for fast-paced FPS gameplay, low DPI, all that stuff. It's a great sensor. However, this sensor does have some negative history with mice in the past. And the reason behind that is that many companies did not implement the 3335 sensor correctly. And so it caused a lot of issues like lift-off distance being too high, things like that, where that is not the case with how Razer, HyperX, all those other brands implemented it. So in the Orochi V2, there's no problems with lift-off distance at 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters. You can choose that. So in this use case, it is a very solid sensor. This is a 1000 hertz pulling rate, up to 18,000 DPI, 450 IPS, and 40 Gs of acceleration. Now the build quality is great here. This is what we expect coming from Razer. No creaks and overall fantastic fit and finish. The entire top shell can be removed to expose the battery location and the USB dongle storage. Now, as far as balance, because this is lighter and a little bit smaller than the Logitech, this feels better for fast whips and quicker gameplay. Overall feel of the mouse when gaming with that lower DPI, I'm talking between 400 and 800 DPI, is really, really good for the price. If you want wireless, yeah, this is really hard to beat. Now again, if you want very, very budget, the Logitech is great, but it's not as light as the Orochi V2. Now, as far as the skates, these are Virgin PTFE, which is fantastic. That's a little bit better than just your average PTFE. There's a long band across the top and then another sizable skate at the bottom of the mouse, as well as a skate around the sensor itself. Now, because of that design, like I said, that's much better than those corner dots or whatever you want to call them. This glides very, very nicely with no real noticeable drag or any issues there. Now, for connectivity, this can use either the 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle, or you can even go Bluetooth. So if you do want to hook Bluetooth up just for like browsing and then go to that dongle for gaming, well, that is a great way to maximize your battery life and just have the ability to switch between a lot of different devices. Now, battery life here hits about 240 hours, but that is for a lithium AAA battery. Again, since this is battery powered, there is no charging capabilities. However, there is some interesting stuff here. One, there's 2 battery compartments when you take off that shell. There is a AA and a AAA compartment. So nice to have, because if it dies and you only have a AA sitting around, yeah, you have to deal with a slightly heavier or a significantly heavier mouse for a little bit, but that's actually really nice to have. They thought that through, but the AAA obviously is going to cut down on weight, but give you a shorter battery life. Then if you go lithium, lithiums are gonna be lighter and they're gonna have a longer lifespan than your traditional batteries. So this battery life is pretty hard to tell you what you're gonna get, but with lithium and a AAA, about 240 hours, probably what I would recommend you going for. Now the switches here are Razer's mechanical V2 switches. They're nice and satisfying and they're not overly light. Some may say that the Logitechs were too light. If you're prone to accidental clicking, then these you're not gonna have a problem with at all. The Razers, great here. Now the scroll wheel is very nicely tactile and it's a little bit sharper than the Logitechs. But the texture of the scroll wheel is what I really, really like. It has these very like sharp bumps. They're obviously not sharp like they're gonna cut you, but it just feels like very tactile. Like the feeling is tactile beyond just the actual tactility. I really like it. Now the weight here is around 65 grams. That's pretty light, and that's with a traditional AAA battery, and then about 84.5 grams with a AA battery. So do make sure you're getting that AAA. Obviously, if you do prefer the balance with a heavier mouse, well, that's up to you. But with that, let's move on to the number 3 spot, which is the HyperX Pulsefire Haste, coming in at a price tag of $79.99. The sensor here is like the Razer sensor. It is the 3335 sensor. And again, well, everything is the same here. It is a fantastic sensor. This is a 1000 hertz polling rate, up to 16,000 DPI, 450 IPS, and 40 Gs of acceleration. Now the build quality here is great. Super well put together like all the mice on the list. It's also a very pretty mouse. It has a grippy matte texture on the majority of the mouse with then glossy accents all throughout it, but they're subtle glossy accents, just a really, really good looking mouse that you don't really understand how good looking it is online. It has to be in person with you. Very pretty mouse. Now the balance here is really good. This is a larger mouse than the previous two, but it is lighter than them, so the balance is just very good. The combination of having a larger footprint, obviously more surface area to not only put your hand on, but then the skates, as well as then being lighter, it just makes it a lot more accurate for me personally. The way it sits in my hand is very comfortable, but it's not as comfortable as number 2. and the number 1 spot. But let's talk the skates. These are Virgin grade PTFE. Now there are 4 skates here. Again, that's not what I typically like. It is the 4 corners, the upper and then the lower 2. Now, these are a little bit bigger than like what you would see on the Logitech, but it still has a little bit of drag. Not even close to what the Logitech had. This still feels very, very glidey. But when you compare it to the Razer or the number 1 and number 2 spot, well, you can see that it doesn't glide quite as well as that. I really don't know why companies use that skate structure or that design. It just doesn't work well. But here, they are larger, so it is pretty good, but it could be better. I am being a little bit nitpicky here. All right, for connectivity, you can either use the 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle, or you can actually go wired. So if it does happen to die and you need to play wired, you can do that. Now, battery life with the RGB on, leaving it on most of the day, is about 60 hours. HyperX claims about 100 hours, but in real life scenarios, about 60 hours. This also charges via USB Type-C, which is what we expect and we like. We love it. Now the switches here are TTC Golden Micro dustproof switches, which are the heaviest on the list, which does give a high level of precision. But for me, I almost never accidentally click, so I do prefer a lighter switch. However, if you're all about precision, and if you do have the tendency to, when you're whipping around, accidentally click, well, these might be really good for you. It's all up to personal preference here. Now the scroll wheel here is tactile, but the tactile bumps are a little far apart for my liking. And it doesn't feel quite as refined as either the Logitech or the Razer, but that does make sense as both Razer and Logitech have a ton of experience putting a lot of research and development into their scroll wheels. Now the weight here comes in at 61 grams, which is very good considering the size of this mouse. And overall, this mouse is fairly underrated. This is not as big as a lot of other mice, but it's very good. Now in the box, you also get that lightweight braided USB-C cable. So if you do want to plug this in and use it wired, you can, and it's a lightweight cable. You also get a USB dongle extender, so you can plug it into that cable and then plug your dongle in there if you are having any connection issues. But I never had any, and my PC is way off to the right, so I don't think you're gonna have any issues there, but it's in the box if you need it. Now this also gives you grip tape, which is sweet, and it gives you extra replacement skates. So that's a lot of extras that you're putting in that box. I think that's really nice, and I really appreciate all those things. But moving on to the number 2 spot, this is the Pulsar Gaming Gear's Xlite V2, coming in at a price tag of $79.95. The sensor here is the Pulsar 3370 sensor, which is a very, very proven sensor. It is one of their best sensors. It's great for the fastest paced games, but pretty much at this point, all of the sensors on this list and the majority of sensors that, well, it happens that you can even get in really budget mice are just unbelievably good in esports level at this point. Now, this hits a 1000 Hz polling rate, 20,000 DPI, 400 IPS, and 50 Gs of acceleration. Build quality is great with a great fit and finish, no creaks. It also has unique cutouts that are more like slots. I really do like that. It's kind of an industrial look rather than a bee's nest, kind of that hexagon, just like a bee. That's a bee right there. This is more like industrial, I like it. Now, this is about the same size as the HyperX, but it's more ergonomic towards your right hand, and it is also taller. So for palm grippers, this is fantastic. Now, I personally really like the balance and size, especially for sniping. The overall feel is great, especially because it is larger than the HyperX, but it's actually lighter. So the extra grip mixed with that adds to a very enjoyable, precise, and not fatiguing gaming experience, even when lifting off a lot, which you obviously would expect from a larger mouse, but well, not here. Now, the skates are Virgin grade PTFE. It has one large skate at the top and then another large skate on the bottom, and then a super small skate around that sensor. This gives a very, very nice glide. It is very smooth, and honestly, I just have great things to say about it. There's really nothing else to it. Great job. Now for connection, this uses either 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle, or you can use a USB Type-C cable. If the RGB is off, it can reach the claimed 70 hours of battery life. However, with RGB on, it gets around 40 to 50 hours of battery life. And again, this does charge with a USB Type-C. Now the switches here are Kale GM 8.0 switches, which I actually really like. They are very satisfying and quite crispy. So if you like a crispy click, there's a crispy click. These switches are finger licking good. Okay, now the scroll wheel here is actually my least favorite on the list. It's not super tactile and it's overall just It's kind of mushy. It's just not my favorite. But let's talk about the weight. With no cable attached, with no charging cable, this thing comes in at 59 grams. For the size of this, that's really good. Now in the box, you get a lightweight braided cable, and then you get that USB dongle extender, which is really nice to have, although again, I did not need it. But guys, with that, let's move on to the number 1 spot, which is the Fantech Aria XD7, coming in at a price tag of $78.80. The sensor here is the 3395 sensor, which is honestly tied as far as I can feel with the 3370. They are basically the best Pixar does in mice, and you'd never really need more than these. These are both like esports level amazing sensors. This hits a 1000 hertz polling rate, 26,000 DPI, 650 IPS, and up to 50 Gs of acceleration. Now, before we get into the gameplay, the build quality, I just want to say when I picked this up, it was a different experience from all of the rest. Now, this might be because of my hand placement or something like that, but this felt different. This felt like I had been looking for this all my life, and I just picked it up and it fit like a glove. It was like a religious experience. It was pretty amazing. Okay, but let's get into actually like why and how this is. Okay, so firstly, the build quality is very good. There's no creaks. It's built very, very well. It has a magnetic shell that either has hole cutouts, they give you 2, or it has no cutouts, and it's just a solid, you know, stealthy looking mouse. It just looks like a mouse. It's just plastic, that's it. But then one of them has hole cutouts if you want less weight. I believe it's less weight. That would make sense. I actually don't know. This also has dongle storage inside of that magnetic piece right there, so that's nice. Now the balance and the grip here is where this gets unbelievably amazing. Now, this may be different between people, but in hand, this feels unreal. Literally, when I first started playing with this, I was like, unbelievably good. Usually during a testing process, sometimes it's harder to put things at the number 1 spot. This was like, yeah, this is there, right? It has the specs to back it up. It's got a good price point, and then this just brings it home across the board. Lift-offs feel amazingly good. It's very lightweight, it's balanced perfectly, but I really can't get over how good the grip is. It doesn't look like a crazy mouse, right? It's got that egg shape, kind of egg shape. It doesn't look like something insane, but just the way your hand fits in it, it doesn't cause fatigue. It's very comfortable. Lift-offs are perfect. It's just like stupid good. Overall, this is my favorite mouse for real, not just on the list, but I think it's so comfortable, it's so good at lift-offs. This is going to be my daily driver for, well, since the testing process until I find a better one. But yeah, I really like the fit of this. As for the skates, this uses a Virgin PTFE with 1 large pad on the top, 1 large pad on the bottom, and then a skate surrounding the sensor. Now this glides incredibly well. I think it glides the best on the list. Part of that's probably due to the weight. Now for connectivity, this uses either Bluetooth 5.0 or 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle, or you can use it in wired connection with a USB Type-C. Now, as for battery life, this has no RGB to change that battery life, but this has a claimed 40 hours of battery life, and I was hitting pretty much that. And this charges via USB Type-C. Now, the switches here are also those KLGM 8.0s. They're super crispy like the Pulsar because they're the same switches, but they have a significantly deeper tone on this, obviously because of the shell and the design, but really nice deep sound while still being crispy. Now the scroll wheel here is tactile and it's close together tactility, so I really like that. It's not as good as the Logitech or the Razer, but that's really to be expected. Now the weight here hits 59 grams with no rear cutout or no shell, back shell, 60 grams with the cutout shell, and then 61 grams with the no cutout shell. That shows how much of a gimmick all those cutout shells are, but sometimes they look cool, so. But in the box, this also gives you grip tape, extra skates, a USB Type-C cable that is a lightweight cable, so you can use this like actually plugged in, a dongle adapter for the cable if you want to extend the range, although again, I never needed to, and then the mouse itself, and that's it. But again, if you want to check out any of the 5 mice in this video, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. I literally still cannot get over how good the Aria XD7 was. Absolutely love that mouse. So stupid good. Now again, I'm not sure if it has to do with person to person, but my girlfriend tried it. Now, granted, she's not as good at like FPS games as me, but she was in love with that mouse as well. So I'm gonna have to test like everyone with this mouse to see if they absolutely love it as much as me, because I am shocked by how good this is. All right, but if you wanna check out the best mouse pad for your mouse to take advantage of all that money you just spent on your mouse, check out this video right here. That thing, well, we got some crazy stuff, some amazing mouse pads. I didn't know mouse pads could get that good before going through a massive review process and doing it, but man, they do. All right, this is Conservative Tech Review, and I'll see you guys in the next video.